Hello, beautiful souls. I'm just here with my morning cup of cacao, and I was inspired to make a video. So I'm gonna find a comfy place to settle in and share. And the topic for this video is shame. Ooh, shame. Such a juicy topic. And I was moving with and processing a little bout of shame this morning. And ironically enough, it was around how free I was feeling in my pleasure, in my self-love, in my expression, in my, if you're familiar with the chakra system, in my sacral chakra. A lot of like self-sourced internal goodness and like soul nutrition alive in my body. And I noticed that the more I let myself be in that and feel so good with that, the better I felt. And there is also this vulnerability. And I feel like there's a very strong connection between shame, vulnerability, and embodied power. And it's beautiful, right? They create a circuitry together. It's not like we have to get rid of shame or not be vulnerable or only be entirely vulnerable or only seek to be embodied in our power and our pleasure. But how can we meet what is revealing to us where we're at and allow it to take us on the path there? So right, I was dancing a lot this morning. I usually dance a lot in the morning. Just really feeling a lot of energy in my body and a lot of love flowing through. And the sacral chakra, it is highly creative. And think of anything that's creative in the universe. What makes something creative? Usually there is a creation that then is being shared with others, right? It's a giving of energy. It's creating, and ideally there's a witness for that creativity. So I do find that maybe some of you may relate when you're feeling like in a really yummy place, when you're feeling connected to your juice, when you're feeling connected to your creativity, your self-love, your pleasure, your power, there might be a tendency to want to share that, right? You call a friend you really love, or you want to write something, or you want to express it, you want to let it be seen. And I noticed that for me is where the shame came up. When I was bridging that wonderful bridge of allowing my own self-sourced joy and internal experience of pleasure and power and passion to be something as a transmission for others. And it struck on the chord of vulnerability first, and then shame. And I think it's really important to break these things down, because it can feel like there's just shame or just anger or just rage, right? But usually there's something beneath it, and something that preludes a very intense, heightened emotion. So I would say shame for me is a little bit more intense than vulnerability. Vulnerability takes a little more presence. Shame is very apparent for me. It's a very strong flavor. So the vulnerability was really like, is this okay? And I thought that was really interesting. And I could almost hear directly, which is so powerful, because no matter how long I personally believe we're doing this work in the world of embodiment and healing and growth, we still come up to those points that are tender and raw and that can make us want to shrink back. I think it's part of being a human. It's expansion and contraction. It's not like you hit this level and all of a sudden you don't feel sadness anymore. You don't feel shame anymore. You don't feel hurt anymore. It's just you have a different way of processing it. You have a different way of working with it. So that's also really beautiful, because, you know, maybe several years back I wouldn't have been able to, or even a couple years back, I wouldn't have been able to really stop and go deep into the shame and feel what was really being asked to be looked at, which is the vulnerability. And yeah, it's like when we go to that place that's beneath the intense emotion, and this is a lot of what I do with like the mentoring clients that I have, coaching, even some of the human design astrology readings, it takes this turn of, okay, so you're feeling this, but what's actually beneath that? You're feeling lost and confused about your path, but like, what's the emotion beneath that? I'm scared. I'm afraid I'm not going to do it right. I'm afraid that what I want I can't actually have, right? So it's like, go deeper. And I feel like that's something that is so powerful about expanding into our pleasure, expanding into our embodiment, expanding into our sexuality and embodied sexuality. Like, what is it to be your own sexual energy and feel that? and connect to the parts of your body where you feel pleasure and move with them and dance with them. So I had this vulnerability come up around being seen and expressed. I said, okay, let's look at this, Kelly. What has this got to show? And yeah, there was a vulnerability, like, is this okay? Is this right? And it took me right to this programming of my childhood, of feeling like being expressed in your power and your sexuality was a really, like, naughty thing or a bad thing. Well, you can't do that. And then I know now that that's not my reality and that's not my truth, and those aren't the virtues and the values that I subscribe to. Yet, I can see how for a long time that was kind of like the imparted programming that I had as my framework. So then it puts me in this position of, okay, I can feel this, right? I can hold this here. I don't want to suppress it because it's going to come back up. It's going to come up in my health. It's going to come up in my self-love. It's going to come up in my thoughts. It's going to come up in my relationships, my friendships, all kinds of partnerships, right? My work. Or I can hold this in the space. How can I be with this shame and vulnerability right now and be with the deeper part of me that is true and solid and anchored in this here and now, and the work I've done and the woman I am now? And then it allows me to go on this very gentle, vulnerable journey, right, of, okay, I feel that, I hear that story, I see where that touches me. And this is what's so powerful for me around embodiment. It's because the body often holds these memories, right? Maybe you were told something when you were 8 or 9 or 10 about your confidence or how loud your voice was or your sexuality or your expression, how much space you took up or your sassiness. And then you were reprimanded, or there was some kind of like moment that stuck. And often that, especially as children, goes somewhere in our body, right? It's kind of like the body takes a hit. It's like, okay. So when we work with the body, as we have these emotions come up that want to be felt and healed, we allow for that disintegrating, but we have to go into it. And depending on the depth and the level of attention that that wound has had, it will require probably different levels of attentiveness and presence and care. So for me, shame is one that I've been quite aware of for a few years now. So I feel like in this space now I can see it and hold it and feel it. For me, it's like in my heart. It's like, oh, it's like right here. It's like, it almost makes me want to cringe. It's like, ugh. Oh, and I can have tenderness for that part of me. Like feeling like, ugh, oh, my expression, my embodied beauty, my creativity, my sexuality, and then like, no, what do I choose to believe in? Self-expression is the most beautiful fucking thing in the world. Every creature on this planet is pulsing with life force. All of nature is pulsing with life. Like, I'm just looking at these bees over there, and they're just like buzzing around this lavender, pollinating, and like drinking it in, right? It's like we all have that capacity, and that's what I stand for. And sometimes, I guess the way I'd love to kind of close this impromptu video is why it's so freaking powerful to go to those places where the shame, the vulnerability, the wounds lie, is because often, and I see this so linked in mostly every astrology chart I've looked at and the clients I've worked with, it's like the shame is so embedded as the gift. And those places where we have the wounds are often where our mission stems from. It's where our vocation, our purpose, our path, our dharma really seeds from, and we grow into it from. I don't like making broad statements. I don't feel like we're born with this ultimate clarity, right? Like, yep, this is me, everything's set up, I'm ready to go. I think on a divine level, of course, everything is so divinely orchestrated, even the pains and traumas and deaths and loss. And you gotta let life work you, you know? You gotta let life work you. That's what builds the character. And I think of like squares in astrology. If you have squares, aspects in your chart, they're hard, you know, they're hard as fuck. They're like 90-degree angles, it's tight, it's like, but they build you, right? So how can you embrace the wounds that come up, the tender parts of you? How can you just like hold them in your space a bit longer while anchoring in at the same time, like almost like two sides of your brain? Yeah, I feel this. Oh, yep. It's like right brain, left side of the body. I feel this. Yep, this is very visceral. I want to cringe, I want to scream, I want to run and hide. Often it's like a body response, it's very somatic. Left brain is what am I choosing? So when we can find ourselves in either deep shadow work or deep downward spirals, depending on how you engage with it, is when both sides of the brain are into the shame, into the wound. But what is it like to say, okay, I can feel this viscerally, I can feel that cringe, that disgust, that anger, and I'm going to use my left brain, my more conscious, masculine, anchored, penetrative, present consciousness, to choose, how am I going to dance with this? Okay, I see what the ingredients are here. I get that. I see you, I feel you, and I actually really stand for beauty. I stand for self-love. I stand for innocence. I stand for freedom. I stand for expression. So just letting you into a bit of my process today. And I think it's really great to share as well because, like so much of what inspired me on the path of embodiment, sensuality, femininity, sexuality, and I'm still on that path and probably always will be, were my own deep wounds. And sometimes I would look out to the world and see people and be like, oh wow, they're in this place, and it's like that projection just doesn't serve anybody, right? Because we all are in these waves, and it's what brings us together. And I know for myself that when I be with the vulnerability and really sit in it a bit longer, with holding my own like masculine awareness of what's going on, right? Like holding the space for myself. Or even better, if you have people that can hold that space for you, or you hold that space for people, that is where deep transformation can happen. But it takes a willingness, right? You have to choose it. You have to choose it. You have to choose it. And say, okay, this is coming up, I'm gonna let it take me, right? The more shadow feminine, that kind of sucky, deep, constricting energy, and say, this is how I'm gonna dance with you. You're beautiful. Thank you for sharing what you have to share, and I see this vulnerability, and this is what I'm holding as true for us. So hope that resonates. Hope that it has some fruitfulness for you. Thanks for hearing my process and for witnessing me in my vulnerability and sharing. And I'm actually starting a challenge. No, challenge. It's fun to say challenge. I go to Mars and Leo, so I kind of like challenges. Starting January 1st, I'm going to be posting a video every day. And I really want to do this for setting the intention to use my voice more and speak freely and express and share and expand the topics I speak about and really honor my intuition. I'm jumping into this with one of my really good sisters as well, so that'll be fun. You'll probably see both of her and I on here, and maybe lots of other people. But yeah, I'm hoping that you're all having a blessed conclusion of 2020, that you're feeling at peace with where you're at, even if that's in a lot of instability and chaos. And keep faith, trust yourself, and big love.